Supervisor, Luis Alejo.
Good morning. How's everybody doing today? All right. As I said, I'm Monterey County Supervisor Luis Alejo. I'm also the chair of the Leading Home Leadership Council for Continuum Care for both Monterey and San Benito counties. To start us off, though, we want you to turn to your right or to your left, and please say buenos dias to somebody at your table there, please. All right? And there's something that you don't know, all right? You just stick with all your colleagues. If there's somebody that you don't know, say hi to that person as well. That's how we do it in Salinas. If you're from Monterey County, can you please raise your hand or yell and yell? All right. This is not fair, but let's say San Benito County. Yeah. Kollin over here as well, the supervisor. All right. I want to thank you for joining us this morning for our third Lead Me Home Summit on Homelessness. And we have over 300 elected education, community, faith, neighborhood, nonprofit, and government leaders who joined us for this event. We are also streaming this live on our Monterey County YouTube and Facebook pages, so if there's people who couldn't join us, please send them those links so they can watch from home or the office. And also, just want to say what an outstanding turnout, and it reflects the tremendous interest in being part of solutions here in our respective counties. I want to thank each and every one of you for caring enough for being here this morning, and wanting to help address one of the greatest challenges of our times, and that is to address our housing and homelessness crisis, which we know those two policy areas go hand in hand. We have some great workshops. We have 3 learning sessions here today. We also want you to stay for lunch because we have some awards to also give out. But I also want to thank all the tremendous organizers who put this event together. And I want to first of all recognize Katrina McKenzie. Let's give her. All this hard work. I also want to thank all our partners, the Coalition of Homeless Service Providers, the Community Foundation, the City of Salinas, the County of Monterey, and all of you as well, which they'll get mentions later. After devising our five-year plan to end homelessness in 2022, our Lead Me Home Leadership Council Board had directed that this summit to be held to bring policymakers and community leaders together to get us on the same page, on the same strategy, and to help us better support and inspire each other to carry on the needed work in our respective counties. We know this is not easy, and we know that we don't have enough champions to address our homelessness crisis, but it is happening. The work that we are accomplishing is because all of you, but we need to recruit more decision makers, more elected officials, and so we want to also encourage you to get more of your colleagues and people that you know involved. And as we all know, if we're honest with ourselves, this work is not easy. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of leadership, and it's not going to be solved overnight. But we recognize that we do need more of us to work together for the short and long term to reduce homelessness in our communities and carry out this needed work in the right way, with compassion, with dignity and respect for those that we are trying to help. I also wanted to take a moment to recognize some of the elected officials that we have here. I want to recognize from the City of Salinas. He's holding it up for all the City Council and the Mayor. Give it up for Salinas Councilmember Tony Barrera over there. We also want to recognize we have some of our law enforcement officials. Salinas Police Department. That's the way to do it, Marina. Thank you. Because we certainly need our law enforcement officials to work with us as well. Our education officials, any school board members, but I know I got the County Office of Education. Let's give it up for them as well. Hopefully they need something to do with us later. And from my colleague, who I'll introduce in a bit, but let's give him some love as well. San Benito County Supervisor, Kollin Kosmicki as well. We'll be here at 10 o'clock, so in a few minutes. Let's give it up for my colleague, Supervisor Wendy Rudascu. And last but not least, those who serve on the Lead Me Home Leadership Council Board, could you please stand up as well if you're here today? Let's give them a round of applause, everybody. These are some of our folks. We meet almost once every 2 months, try to address homelessness, and we appreciate them volunteering their time to serve with us. To get things started, I want to invite the co-chair of the Leaving Home Leadership Council and the San Benito County Supervisor, Kollin Kosmicki. He has been serving as a county supervisor since 2021, and he represents Aromas, San Juan Bautista, and parts of Hollister, and maybe some other parts of San Benito County that I'm missing. Let's give it up for Kollin Kosmicki, everybody.
Yeah, first of all, it's just really wonderful to see so many people in a room together. You know, I can feel the excitement, I can feel the passion in this room, and I'm just really excited for everybody to be involved in a great day of productive dialogue and activities as we embark on continuing to take on this immense challenge that we have in front of us. I also want to give a shout out to all the organizers to this event, Katrina McKenzie, Executive Director of the Coalition, and just want to say it takes a lot of work to put this together, to have all the people here in this room, all the speeches, all the workshops, all the activities. There's just a lot of work that goes into it, so really want to say we appreciate all the organizers, everybody involved, all the agencies that took time to come out here today. It's going to be well worth your while. So good morning to all esteemed guests. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 2025 Lead Me Home Summit on Homelessness. This is our now annual gathering of stakeholders, service providers, people with lived experience. We all have a shared commitment to improve the lives of thousands and thousands of residents in our communities who need our help. And again, just to reiterate, I'm Kollin Kosmicki. I'm a supervisor of San Benito County, served with Supervisor Alejo and many others on the Leadership Council. It is an honor to be involved with this effort. I can tell you that there have been a lot of very productive discussions and initiatives that have gone forward, and we're excited to keep the work going. And I'll just say, you know, we all want to end homelessness. It's an ambitious goal, and we're going to continue working toward that goal. It may seem impossible at times. It may seem sometimes we take some steps back, but we can see in this room here today that we have a group of people who are ready to take on the challenge. And we may not always agree precisely on how to take it on. We may not agree on how to approach this inherently complicated path to reach this incredibly ambitious goal. But I know I can say without a shred of hesitation that everyone in this room, everyone, I know it, shares a united commitment toward helping these individuals turn their lives around. A commitment toward shattering the seemingly unbreakable cycle of poverty, toward addressing mental health and addiction issues that all too often lead people to a path of hopelessness and ultimately homelessness. And we're all here because we care deeply. We're here because we care deeply about the well-being of others, our neighbors, and we're willing and ready to take on this immense challenge. We're here to collaborate. Last year's inaugural in-person summit was a tremendous success. We had 327 attendees, 28 speakers. There were 3 learning sessions, 8 discussion topics, and the event really did spark an enthusiastic outlook, dialogue on innovative ideas on how to reduce homelessness. This year, we're glad to announce that we've reached our capacity, essentially, of 350 participants with 29 exceptional speakers across 12 different sessions throughout the day. And these speakers include experts from all levels of government, national, state, local, and voices. We're going to hear voices from homeless service providers and a first-time partnership with Office of Education Representation, which we're very excited about. You know, a lot of these issues really do start with the schools, and you know, we can never forget that there are countless children out there who are you know, going through their lives, no choice of their own, facing these challenges with their families, and the schools really are at the heart, they're at the core of dealing with these issues as well. So it's really wonderful to have school representation here this year. And I will say, it goes without saying that the turnout here today does reflect a dedication in our communities to address homelessness in thoughtful ways. And we do need to be thoughtful. This is not going to be easy, we know that. At the same time, we do absolutely need to explore uncomfortable solutions to the crisis. We cannot simply rely on the playbook that hasn't always worked. The numbers do not lie. We all know that we got the numbers this year again, and we're facing a daunting task here. The homelessness crisis is getting worse. We have more homeless individuals in Monterey, San Benito County, and we're ready to take it on. We're all passionate about ending homelessness, but the problem is only worsening across the nation, across the state, our local communities. Like I said, our populations have grown substantially. We must acknowledge that we've moved further away from our goal. That said, we're not always going to agree on every solution. Some of us believe in encampment cleanups, some of us do not. Some of us believe in ideas like care court, some of us do not. Some of us believe more housing opportunities will largely solve the issue, and some of us do not. Some of us believe focusing on mental health solutions will largely solve the problem, and some of us do not. The truth is, real progress is likely going to necessitate a wide spectrum of all these approaches. It'll likely necessitate each and every one of us accepting and listening to others' differing viewpoints. It will likely necessitate we all challenge our own deeply rooted beliefs and principles. And while none of us have the perfect answers to this challenge, because if we did, we wouldn't be sitting here today, I can promise you one thing is necessary if we're going to accomplish our ultimate goal. We must do things differently than we have in the past, in many ways than how we are doing things now, because history doesn't lie. As we move through these sessions today, I encourage you to think boldly, to speak bluntly but respectfully, and to ask difficult questions. We're here to make progress, and we can only do that together with open minds about how to get there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kollin, and we want to appreciate his leadership. Our continuum of care, for those that don't know what a continuum of care is, we're a separate entity from the county or from our cities. We do get federal and state funding streams, and we are one of 44 continuums of care in the state of California, despite having 58 different states. But San Benito and Monterey are placed together in this COC, and it's been critical having our partners from San Benito County working also together with us to make sure that we're making progress. And I'm totally in agreement. There's a lot of different approaches. We don't always agree on everything, but we have more collaboration today than we've ever had in each of our respective counties and also between both counties. Before we move on to the next speaker, I wanted to do some housekeeping items. Ms. Katrina McKenzie wanted me to tell all of you to please download our digital agenda. We're saving paper, so on that little thing there on your tables, there's some barcodes. The one to your left is the agenda itself. The one is in the center is the community input survey session that we're also asking you to fill out. So while you're here, if you can fill out the community input session, survey, and then also you could download the agenda as well. That would help us to follow what the program is today. We also wanted to check in on the WOVA app as well. I'm not sure what WOVA app is, but those that do, please check in as well. All right. Let's see. Next, we were scheduled to have our keynote speaker, Meghan Marshall, the executive director for the California Interagency Council on Homelessness. She was appointed to her position by Governor Gavin Newsom in March of 2023. And she has over 17 years of experience working in the public sectors of public health, behavioral health, human services, housing, and homelessness, including county government. She unfortunately could not be here today, but she has prepared a video, and we will ask our tech team to play that speech at this time. Thank you.
Hello everyone, it's truly an honor to join you virtually, my apologies, for the 2025 Lead Me Home Summit on Homelessness. I want to begin by saying thank you to the organizers, the frontline workers, the advocates, and the local leaders there in Monterey County who are doing the hard work, or if you're a social worker, the hard work every single day. What you're doing matters and it is making a difference. My name is Meghan Marshall. I'm the Executive Officer for the California Interagency Council on Homelessness. And this work is incredibly personal for me. When I was a little girl, my mom and I had an old baby blue station wagon. And if you're not familiar, station wagons don't have a traditional trunk, but a long cargo space with windows all around that give you almost a 360-degree view from the back. All that to say, it was perfect for the drive-in movie theaters, and I'll date myself a little bit more here, but remember seeing the Jetsons movie in 1990 at a drive-in here in Sacramento and thinking how cool I was, all propped up in the back of the station wagon with my blankets, my pillows, my snacks, and having like a recognition of how great my mom was to make simple things like this, like drive-in special. We also went camping along our Sacramento River Parkway in that station wagon. And I went to school so excited to tell my friends that my mom and I got to live in our car and how much fun we were having together. My mom had gone to painstaking lengths to make this time in our lives feel like an adventure. And it wasn't until we were in the welfare office that I realized it was not an adventure. And at 6 years old, I didn't quite understand what the caseworker was saying to my mom, but I knew by her tone it wasn't good. She kept using the word homeless, which really didn't make any sense to me because my mom always told me home was where we were together, and we were always together. So when I think about that one interaction these 32 years later, I still feel the same dominant emotion today that I felt then but didn't have the vocabulary for, and that's rage. My mother was doing everything she could to shield me from that reality and from the fear and instability that come with not having a physical place to call home. In my mother's most desperate time of need, this caseworker made sure to do everything she could to make my amazing mother feel undeserving and ashamed. But that one brief experience left a very permanent mark on me. It shaped who I am and is why I care so deeply about this work. It's why today I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Officer for the California Interagency Council on Homelessness. And every day I carry that little girl who so badly wanted to tell that mean woman at the welfare office to leave her mommy alone with me in this role. And today, I want to celebrate someone else who brings heart, brilliance, and sheer audacity to this work. Roxanne Wilson, of course, is your Director of Homeless Services. Roxanne doesn't just lead, she leads boldly. She brings people together when systems want to pull them apart. She speaks the truth, even, and I would say especially when it's uncomfortable. And she never lets bureaucracy get in the way of humanity. Roxanne, the entire state sees you as a model of what's possible when leadership is rooted in love, equity, and relentless action. Thank you for your partnership and for serving on Cal ICH's advisory committee. A little bit about Cal ICH. We are not a funder. We are not an overseer. We are a policy driver, a technical assistance partner, and a data powerhouse. We're here to support counties like yours to help make sense of systems, break down silos, and create real sustainable solutions to homelessness. Whether it's helping you refine coordinated entry systems, interpret your system performance data, or connect with peers across the state, we're here to walk beside you. We know local leadership is where change happens, and it's our job. It's the job of the state to make sure you don't have to go it alone. And for the first time ever, the state of California has a plan that doesn't just call on others to act, it holds itself accountable too. Our statewide action plan to prevent and end homelessness includes goals, measurable outcomes, and timelines to track our progress, not just for local communities who are implementing programs, but for state government itself. We believe that if we're going to ask others to lead with urgency and transparency, the state must do the same, because accountability starts at the top. I do want to speak plainly for a moment. Not every community is showing up. Some cities in California still treat homelessness like it's someone else's problem. They point to their small numbers and step away from the table. They push people experiencing homelessness into neighboring jurisdictions. They fail to plan, they fail to invest, they fail to lead. But let me be very clear, on behalf of the administration, no one gets to sit this out. This is a statewide crisis, and every single jurisdiction, big or small, city or county, has a role to play. The trauma of homelessness doesn't care about geographical boundaries, and neither should our responses. No jurisdiction should have the ability to derail projects or policy to address this crisis. That's not partnership, that's obstruction. We need shared accountability, we need shared urgency, because when one community opts out, everyone pays the price. So whether you're a large urban center, a rural community, or a beautiful coastline, the responsibility is shared, and so is this opportunity. Yes, this work is hard, budgets are tight, systems are strained, the needs are overwhelming, but progress is possible, and Monterey County is absolutely proof of that. You are doing the work, you are showing what it means to lead with integrity and urgency, you're trying new things, you're embracing accountability, and most importantly, you're refusing to give up. Truly, communities like yours are the reason this work moves forward. And I'll close with this. The system failed my mother and me. She did everything right. She worked hard, full-time job at that, stayed hopeful, put her child first, and still she was met with shame instead of support. We weren't treated with dignity, we weren't seen, and we weren't helped in the way that we needed. That should never happen to anyone, ever. And I'm here today in this role, in this fight, really, because I want better. Better for every mother holding it all together, better for every child wondering why safety feels so out of reach, and better from a system that should exist to serve and not to punish. So I will not stop pushing, I will not stop demanding, and I will not stop working until every person in California has what my mom and I needed the most: a home, dignity, and a system that doesn't turn its back when it's needed the most. Thank you for being in this fight with me. Thank you for believing that better is possible. And thank you, Monterey County, for showing the rest of the state what it looks like when local leadership refuses to give up. Let's keep going together. Thank you all.
We definitely appreciate her words and her partnership, and I did want to just jump in and give accolades to the one and only Roxanne Wilson as well. Let's give her a round of applause for representing us. Yeah, stand up. All right. This is one of our unsung heroes. You may not see her out in the meetings, but she's working behind the scenes, and almost every crisis, every emergency, Roxanne has a role, and we're really glad to have her leadership within our county. Also joining us is our assistant CEO. Let's give her Debbie Polinelli as well. Get to meet her, Debbie Byrne, our assistant CEO from Fresno County to Monterey not too long ago, and we love having her leadership as well. I want to next introduce our plenary speaker, Alex Visotzky, who is a senior California policy fellow for the National Alliance to End Homelessness, who will be speaking on progress, challenges, and the road ahead. Alex's mission is to ground California's response to homelessness in the best practices available. His prior experience includes working in local government, most recently as the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, the lead entity for the Los Angeles Continuum of Care, where he focused on legislative, policy, and community engagement work. So he definitely has insights, experience, and a lot of street cred. Let's give him a big Monterey County welcome as well.
Feels like a party with the red cups everywhere. Hope we can keep that vibe going. First of all, I want to thank all of you so much for having me here in Monterey County and the San Benito County community. It's really a privilege and an honor to share space with all of you. This is a community that's gotten a lot of amazing things done on homelessness in the face of so many challenges, whether it's devastating flooding in 2023, to continuing to get folks housed in one of the toughest housing markets in the country. All of you deserve a round of applause for continuing to find ways to make it happen amid these challenges, so thank you so much. When the coalition and when Roxanne asked me to come speak to you all today, they asked me to speak about the progress we've seen in our field, the challenges we're facing, and the road ahead. I was a little afraid of this charge. I can talk about the progress. I can talk about the wins we've seen over the years. There are many, and my organization, the National Alliance to End Homelessness, meticulously tracks the data and the stories that show the many ways that we are, in fact, making progress on homelessness. I'll talk about some of those because they're really important to keep taking stock of. And yes, I can certainly talk about the challenges. I could probably spend all day talking about the challenges, from the in-the-weeds challenges of funding supportive services in our PSH buildings, to the big picture challenges of how we convince the public that the right way to solve homelessness is not by hiding people from public view, but by getting them into housing. Talking about the road before us, the way forward, how we keep making progress and forging ahead when so much feels so broken. I felt like I suspect many of you feel in this moment at a bit of a loss. Every day feels like a new deluge of headlines, executive orders, and even capitulations from some of those that we entrust to fight for our interests. It's enough to make you want to pull the covers up all the way. At our holiday party at the Alliance back in December, we did a white elephant gift exchange. And I think it was telling that at least 4 people in our office gave weighted blankets. I suspect those blankets have been put to good use. So when it came to thinking about the road ahead, I really sat with this question for a bit, and eventually I came to thinking about how I got into this work. And no, I don't mean what my first job was in the homeless response world, but what called me to this work long before I worked at the National Alliance, or before I worked at the LA Continuum of Care, or the scrappy community-based organizations that I was at when I first got to Los Angeles. I grew up in New York City, part of the Jewish community on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And like most Jewish families in my community, my folks expected me to get bar mitzvahed, which is a coming-of-age ritual that happens at the age of 13, which really marks when you become a full member of the community. I was a typical adolescent, so I was not exactly philosophical about the ritual of becoming an adult or a full member of my community that could make decisions for myself. Nevertheless, my folks were insistent on one thing. Before I could become bar mitzvahed and go through this ritual, I would have to dedicate several months to weekly community service somewhere in the neighborhood. Being part of a community, they told me, meant showing up for your neighbors and lending a hand when neighbors were in need. And so, not thinking too hard about it, I picked an organization called the Momentum Project, which provided free meals and case management to housing insecure and homeless New Yorkers with HIV and AIDS. Now this was the 90s, and something to know about New York City in the 90s. This was Rudy Giuliani's New York. Giuliani rose to power in New York City by stoking fear of the other, by spinning dark stories of chaos and disorder. He declared war on the poor, whether it was launching stop and frisk, criminalizing panhandling, or leaning into stereotypes about dependency and welfare. That was the New York we were in. And that narrative permeated into the culture, whether you agreed with it or not. It permeated into the stories we heard adults tell. So when I showed up to serve that first day at the Momentum Project as a 12-year-old, I really didn't know what to expect. Of course, I was immediately welcomed into a community of warm, kind people who, despite their diagnosis, despite their housing insecurity, laughed harder and hugged harder than anyone I had ever met. I met people who, when we were short-staffed And even sometimes when we weren't, would throw on an apron and a hairnet, grab a ladle and start serving. People who, despite being clients, wanted to serve, wanted to be helpful and lend a hand to their community and their neighbors. And I remember being struck that first afternoon I went, before we all sat down and ate dinner together, when everyone in the room gathered in a circle, held hands, and said the words of a prayer that I know will be familiar to some of you in this room. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The serenity prayer, right? I know many of you who have worked in recovery spaces, or if you've been to AA, you've heard it. I don't know if I believe in God, and I don't think it meant too much to me as a 12-year-old, but as I heard that prayer, every week it became etched into my brain. And time again, I find that I come back to it in moments of doubt, moments of fear, moments of not really knowing what my place is in the work. I would hear that prayer every week for the next 6 years as I served at the Momentum Project. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I know there's many mornings when I look at my phone first thing and I see the headlines and it's that first part, right? God, grant me the serenity. And that's when I force myself to think about the progress, the many things that we have gotten done. On the national level, we've seen the evidence that Housing First works. When nationwide we saw declines in homelessness every year from 2010 to 2016 after HUD incentivized the switch to the model. With our veterans, we've seen what it looks like when housing resources are paired with supportive services and robust levels of care, all of it using a Housing First approach. Nationally, we've seen veteran homelessness fall by 55% since 2010. And here in California, even here in California, we've seen veteran homelessness fall by 45% since 2011. We've seen just in the last couple of years, the state of California go from minuscule investments, pretending homelessness wasn't a state issue, to investing billions in one-time funding. And we know that that's not enough, and this is the part where I was supposed to kind of harangue Meghan, but she's not here, so I can't do that. We know that's not enough. We know we need ongoing funding. But in the last couple years, we've seen ongoing funding go from just a whisper in the Capitol to something that Republicans and Democrats are talking about openly in both the Senate and Assembly. We've seen folks in the public around the country increasingly begin to understand what all of us in this room, I think, intuitively understand. That homelessness growing and becoming more visible all over the country, that's not a result of more and more people making bad choices and falling down as people. That's a result of something that is bigger, that is wrong in our country. It's a symptom of a housing system that's broken for millions of people and a safety net that doesn't have cracks that people slip through, but big gaping holes. We can't discount the progress of more and more people beginning to understand that this is not an accident, but that this is an outrageous injustice, and people are now advocating for policies to change it. People didn't just suddenly start to get it. People got it because years and years of work to communicate differently, to lift up research, and to lift up people's stories. Those things don't happen without the daily grind of people doing the work. From advocates and policymakers, communications professionals, case managers, outreach workers, developers building supportive housing, people with lived experience telling their stories, all of them waking up every day and doing it. Our progress and the wins we see on homelessness, they're not an accident. They're not some lightning strike from above, but they're the product of thousands of unseen hands, a pitter-patter of raindrop after raindrop that eventually fills up a bucket. And we're gonna need every one of those raindrops, every small act, to keep moving our work forward, because the challenges facing us, they have not gotten any easier, right? They've gotten bigger. Ending homelessness is no longer a matter of lining up the right resources or getting our systems right. It's not a matter of getting an accurate by name list. Those things matter, and progress on those things matters towards getting folks back into housing, but just getting those things right is not going to end homelessness to get us to a place where it's rare. That's because solving homelessness now requires us to think about how housing works in this country in fundamentally new ways. It requires us to make foundational changes to how we do housing. That's a really big problem, but it also means that we're starting to see the problem more clearly than ever before. Folks on the street are compelling us to ask fundamental questions about housing. They're compelling us to ask whether it makes sense to let rental housing be a commodity that can be bought and sold by private equity firms, a commodity that can be used, sorry, a commodity that can be used to squeeze as much money out of a person, even if that person is an elderly neighbor who has to forego buying groceries to make the rent. Folks on the street, disproportionately Black folks, are compelling us to ask whether we're doing enough to challenge a homeownership system where the homeownership rate is 30 points higher for white families than it is for Black families, and where the average white family still has 7 times the wealth of the average Black family. Folks on the street are compelling us to ask whether it still makes sense to give affluent communities 1,000,001 tools to say no to affordable housing being built in their communities. They're compelling us to ask whether, after a massive fire or a flood destroys people's homes, whether it continues to make sense to let landlords rent gouge people and evict them. Even now, when housing, in 2025, when housing is a crushing problem for millions of people across this country, these questions are hard and scary to ask openly. They're hard to ask in the most conservative parts of our country. They're hard to ask in the most progressive parts of our country. When Martin Luther King marched for a proposed fair housing ordinance in 1966, he had bricks thrown at his head and crowds of people screaming the N-word at him, not in Mississippi, not in Alabama, but in Chicago. These questions that we have to ask scare the crap out of people. Make no mistake, this is why people are going after housing first and attacking it on a national level. And yes, that is one of the big challenges we face, and a challenge that threatens to undo a lot of our progress. There's really hard questions around housing first that we need to talk about within our sector. Make no mistake about that. Are we providing the right level of supportive service dollars needed to really make the model work? How are we providing real choice and pathways to sober environments for folks who want that? What are the long-term implications for our supportive housing buildings? But the folks that are attacking housing first at the national level, they don't care about those questions. They don't care that housing first is actually a model that means less bureaucracy, less red tape, faster pathways out of homelessness. They're challenging housing first and trying to make housing first the center of the conversation, because if we can blame housing first for homelessness, then we don't have to ask those bigger questions. If we can blame housing first for homelessness, we don't have to spend time challenging a housing model that plays a pivotal role, if not the most pivotal role, in reinforcing and hardening the existing class and racial hierarchy in this country. No, you can clap. It's the same with some of these criminalization proposals and these stories we hear about how people don't want help. They're just trying to move the ball. They're just trying to distract us from the hard questions and the work we need to do to fix our broken safety net, fix our housing systems, and fix homelessness. Maybe you heard about the latest one just up the road in San Jose. Feels like this is like the worst Jay Leno bit. Have you heard about the latest criminalization proposal? It occurs to me that a bunch of people in this room probably don't know who Jay Leno is. Makes me feel old. The mayor in San Jose is proposing that if you don't accept a shelter bed after 3 offers, you can be arrested. Never mind that there are only 2,900 shelter beds in San Jose, 95% of which are filled every night, and another 5,500 people that are still unsheltered. How does that math work? I'm glad this hasn't been proposed where I live in Los Angeles, because I do not know how I'd explain that proposal to my neighbors. Just around the corner from me, there is a woman named Marisol who is living outside. She's 65 years old. She fled an abusive relationship long ago before becoming homeless. I'm supposed to tell her that the real answer for her is that she needs to accept shelter regardless of what that shelter looks like and who else might be there. Marisol sticks around our block because her 92-year-old mother lives nearby and she wants to be close. Her mother is suffering from dementia and dying. I'm supposed to tell her that the real answer is that she needs to accept shelter regardless of where it is and how far it is from her mom, or face arrest. I'm supposed to tell her that the real answer is that we just aren't punishing her hard enough. I know all of you who work in this field know people with stories like that. We should also be clear that by refusing to look our housing crisis in the eye, refusing to ask our hard questions about our housing system, we're not just harming folks experiencing homelessness, we're degrading society for everyone else around us. I don't know if folks have heard of the curb cut effect. This is an idea that was put forward by Angela Glover Blackwell, who's one of the great policy advocates of our time. She talks about how when people with disabilities fought for something simple, curb cuts on the street corners so folks with wheelchairs could get down to the street and up onto the sidewalk more easily, it actually made life better for a whole lot of other people. Suddenly, parents pushing strollers could cross the street with ease. Delivery people pushing heavy carts could get up onto the sidewalk. In other words, when you make life easier for the least among us, the most marginalized among us, there's a whole lot of ways it makes life easier for everyone else. We know this to be true about affordable housing from years and years of research as well. I think the opposite can be true too, though. That when we make life harder for the least among us, it makes life worse for everyone. Nowhere is this more true than the ways we're making our society more hostile to folks experiencing homelessness. When we shut down the public bathroom in our neighborhood park because we're afraid someone experiencing homelessness might use it, suddenly I have nowhere to take my kid to relieve themselves. When we take away the bench in the shade by the bus stop because we're afraid someone experiencing homelessness might sit there, suddenly our older neighbor who's headed to a doctor's appointment has nowhere to sit while they wait for the bus. Because we refuse to look our housing crisis in the eye, we are making our communities worse for everyone around us. So the challenges are many, and those challenges just got a lot bigger and harder with the moment we're in at the federal level. We have an administration whose entire modus operandi is reinforcing and hardening racial and class hierarchy in this country while trying to erase any discussion that this hierarchy even exists. They're erasing any discussion, whether that means erasing books from the shelves, erasing people from public view, whether those are folks from our streets being pushed out of sight into incarceration, or erasing immigrants that came here fleeing the violence and poverty that our foreign policy has fueled in places like Central America, or just flat out banning people's gender identities. The challenges are big and they're frightening, and sometimes the challenges are enough to make anyone, even the most hardcore activists among us, to want to turn to an action. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, the wisdom to know the difference. That second part, to accept the things I cannot change. When I was younger, I used to think accept the things I cannot change was an excuse, that it was something I could lean on and use to forgive myself my own inaction. And as I've done this work over the last few years, I've lost more battles than I've won, and I've come to realize that's not what it means. As tempting as it might be to pull that weighted blanket of an action over ourselves because the challenges are too great to feel like there's any hope that our small part in this can make a difference. Václav Havel, who was a playwright and dissident and spent years agitating for freedom in then authoritarian Czechoslovakia, touched on this. He said, "Hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but it's the certainty that something is worth doing regardless of how it turns out." And that's what I've realized about that piece on accept the things I cannot change. It doesn't mean we stop doing what we need to do when the challenges are great. It means accepting that we might not always get the result we want. It means we forgive ourselves when we don't get the result we want, because we must forgive ourselves if we aren't going to abandon our work. There's so much outside of our control, and we can't always control the outcome. But we do the work knowing that at the end of the day, we control what we can. And with all those things outside our control, even if our action didn't get us the result, our inaction most certainly will not get us there. So what's the road ahead? This is the part where I tell you that it's all going to be okay. I don't know exactly how this story is going to go, how choppy the waters will get in the next couple of years, but I know that we need to keep telling the truth. I know we need to keep telling the truth, that if we pretend like slavery didn't happen, if we pretend like we didn't put immigrant families in internment camps in the 40s, if we pretend like there isn't a war on our immigrant neighbors now, if we pretend like there isn't a war on our LGBTQ family and friends, then we are doing their work for them. We're making it easier for them to strip away our voices, and that will then make it easier for them to come and cut our funding for homelessness and housing. Make no mistake, these things are not disconnected. There's a reason the serenity prayer isn't the convenience to change what's easy, but instead the words are the courage to change the things I can. The courage. The prayer is telling us that when we have courage, when we speak up and use our voice, we can change a whole lot more than we thought possible. The road ahead is remembering that every day you do this work, you are bringing the end of homelessness closer and making the end of homelessness more possible. You're proving with every drop of water that you put in the bucket that it can be done, just as thousands and thousands of people working on HUD VASH programs all did their little piece of showing how we could drive down veteran homelessness faster than anyone thought possible. And we should be aware that even as the road ahead seems rocky, our actions and the things we do have a way of rippling a lot farther than we thought possible. I opened this speech by talking a little bit about the Momentum Project, where I showed up to serve as a 12-year-old, and where my years of service called me back into this work a few years later. When I started showing up at Momentum in the basement of a church on 73rd Street, there was a young man named Ricky who was a client. Ricky was only a couple years older than I was. He was soft-spoken and shy, but he would always come over and check on me. He would always say hi, ask what was going on in my life, or bring up the latest thing happening to our New York Knicks. And this is before the Knicks were terrible for 20 years straight, and talking about them was really depressing. Ricky was showing me a small kindness, making me feel welcome and included every week. During the harder weeks, when school would get crazy or I didn't feel the motivation to do one more thing after school, it was Ricky's small kindnesses that kept me coming, and kept me coming long enough that I realized this work was my path. When I'm having trouble motivating now, I sometimes think about my friend Zoe, a formerly homeless, disabled woman who lives in Los Angeles and is one of our fiercest advocates in the state. When Zoe was giving testimony to a state legislative committee in Sacramento a couple years ago, I was sitting in the audience. She talked about being homeless with her daughter and how keeping her daughter on track in school, keeping her going to her extracurricular Japanese lessons, that was her North Star. She might have lost everything, but she was not going to allow it to derail her daughter. As a parent now, I think about the immense strength and fortitude that must have taken for Zoe. I think about the immense fortitude and strength that must have taken for Meghan's mother. And I'm reminded that the people who have survived homelessness are the opposite of deficient, but are in fact the strongest people we have in our communities. If she could keep going for her daughter, I can keep going and fighting on in my work for the thousands of Zoes that are finding the courage to change the things I can. I share Ricky's story, I share Zoe's story, because I find that in our work, in the daily kindnesses we show each other, in the occasional moments of courage in telling our stories, and taking that extra step, that extra moment to acknowledge each other's humanity, I promise you that we are having impacts that we might not always see, we might not always understand, but which are rippling out and are having a greater impact than we can possibly imagine. That with each kindness, each acknowledgement of each other's humanity, acknowledgement of each other's pain and frailty, but also each other's humor, aspirations, and dignity, we are building something together. We're building the base and the foundation for future leaders to stand on, And though it may feel like the floodwaters are rising, those kindnesses, small as they may be, might be a lifeboat for somebody. Accepting the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, the wisdom to know the difference. The wisdom to know the difference. The road ahead is going to require us to be bold and tell the truth about what we see every day, the wreckage of decades of failed policy choices. But there are some days where our simple kindnesses to one another and to those folks we serve and those folks we work alongside, there are some days when those kindnesses will be enough that day. The road ahead is going to require that we draw strength from one another. So if I can borrow a page from Supervisor Alejo's book, I want you to take a moment, look at the person that's to your left. I want you to take another moment and look at the person that's to your right. Those couple folks you just saw, those are people that get out of bed every day and do work to end homelessness. Whether it's hard, whether it's easy, whether they're feeling weary and sick, those are people that find a way to keep going and pushing forward. Because just like you do, they believe that everyone deserves to have a safe and affordable home of their own. I want you to take a moment and say to those people that are next to you, I've got your back. Seriously, say it to each other.
Just your back. And your back. And your I don't have your back.
You're in a room. You're in a room of not one or two of those people, but over 300 of those people, all of whom live right here in this community. 300 of those people right here in this community. You're in a room of 300 plus people that when it comes to the hard work we do, have got your back. That's how I know that we can end homelessness in Monterey County, in San Benito County. We can fill up rooms like this up and down California. We can fill up rooms like this all across this country. That's how I know that we can end homelessness in California, and that's how I know we can end homelessness in this country. Because we have a movement of folks that believe, just like you and I do, that everyone deserves a home. We have a movement of folks that are willing to fight like hell every day to make it happen. So when you're feeling alone, or you're talking to somebody who doesn't believe, or when you're running into a barrier in one of your programs, or you're watching our leaders do the wrong thing, I want you to remember this room of people. I want you to remember that there's a movement of people that are fighting like hell to end homelessness, and they all have your back. Thank you. Have a good time.
Alex, we appreciate you coming all the way from Los Angeles. We hold these summits because we want to hear from experts in this area. We want to hear what's working, what are the challenges, what are other communities doing. I know we have some time, so I wanted to ask Alex if he's willing to, does anybody have any questions for him? Because I know we don't get him too often up here. And then maybe if you could just do a little Q&A. Yes, please.
Mine isn't so much a question in that I want to just acknowledge that was an amazing speech. My name is Ned. Good morning. My name is Christy. I just want to say thank you for the information. One of the things that I always try to advocate for whenever I'm in these spaces is learning about any gaps within the farm worker community. So I would love to know, just for context, both of my parents were farm workers. My grandparents, both on my mom's side and on my dad's side, came here as through the Bracero program. So the farm worker community is something that is near and dear to my heart. I would love to learn, do you have any current data that showcases specifically the inequities within the farm workers and housing disparities within this population?
Not off the top of my head, I don't, but I'm happy to follow up. But I think you get to something really important, right? Which is that we need to keep growing the tent, we need to keep growing the movement of folks, and working with folks like, UFW is going to be really important in making sure that we're seeing the progress we want to see. I think around the state, we're starting to have these conversations about how do we work with groups like labor, how do we work with groups that, can help bring more power to our movement, and I think, those alliances with farm worker groups like UFW is going to be really important moving forward.
Thank you very much. And just to your question, certainly a lot of need there, and I think when we get together with our state legislators, we need to talk about additional state monies. There's the bonds, they talk about affordable housing, but when it comes to specific housing for our workforce and for farm worker families, that's certainly a tremendous need. But at least on the employer side here in Monterey County, we have 10 projects now that are fully paid by employers, 100% paid by employers. They call that employer-sponsored housing. We have 10 projects. That's over 4,000 beds to house agricultural workers. Yes, most of those are for H-2A guest workers. 2 of those, though, are for also domestic farm workers. Tanimur and Antle, and I think Vanguard, their project that is being built now will be for domestic farm workers as well. But that's individual workers. We need housing for the entire families as well, which we know that need is great. So thank you for asking that question. And talking about your grandfather with Bracero, we have a beautiful ceremony taking place tomorrow in Chulad to recognize our farm worker history, the history of the Bracero workers who came here to the Salinas Valley and the United States between 1942 to 1964, and we have a mural dedication. So that is 4:30 to 6:30 tomorrow in Chulad. So please join us to pay tribute to your grandfather as well. Before we move on to the next one, we ended a little early here, but I want to recognize another champion from our neighboring county, and we're talking about meeting new people that you don't know. You got to meet San Benito here. We got to show some love. But one of those leaders in San Benito County, let's get for Enrique Arriola. So you're going to meet this guy, Aaron Bray. He's doing a lot of great work here in San Benito County, and he's been a great partner on all my 9 years as a county supervisor. So thank you as well. So we're going to have some extra time, but I want to tell people where the workshops are going to be for this next learning session. So there's a workshop on local solutions, local governments that are tackling homelessness. That's going to be in Gallery Room 1, which is right through those doors here. Innovative district programs serving homeless families, I believe that is. That's going to be Gallery 2, which is through those doors, but there's this back room this way. Unlocking Calling Pathways to Transforming Homeless Healthcare. That's in the Vista room. That's this smaller room here to my left. And how we make housing first a success is going to be here in the Salinas room. All right, let's take a break, everybody. Please meet other people in the meantime, and please attend your workshops.